What's up, guys? Welcome back to episode 2 of our Premier League update. We're going to go through all of week 2's action, exciting week there, and get you set for what should be an exciting week 3 before the Premier League goes on their international duty break. So let's start with the first game of the weekend, the Saturday morning special, Liverpool and Burnley. So last week I said Liverpool either needs to take control of possession, or if they're going to have low possession games, they need to be good on the counterattack. Well, they put up more possession this week, 67%, just dominated in that sense. Took 27 shots, 9 on target. Really gave it to Burnley with the 2-0 win in the opening game at Anfield. So always good to see Liverpool, who should be a top 4 team this year, get out to a good start at home. Burnley was the opposite. They actually reversed their possession, or they had a reverse problem that Liverpool had. They put up 66% possession last week against Brighton, just 33% this week. I mean, Liverpool is a stronger team than Brighton, so that can be explained, but they do need to try to limit that so they're not flirting with going below 30% possession. It's really just an on to the next for them. They're not going to beat the big 4 teams. They may be able to salvage a point or two here and there, but a loss at home to Liverpool is not necessarily a bad loss for Burnley. It's not one they expect. It's not a win they expected to get. So really on to the next week for them. Then we'll move to Villa and Newcastle. Villa back on the right track after a tough 3-2 loss to Watford last week. They win 2-0 at home to Newcastle. They really just outskilled Newcastle. Danny Ings showed up again. He's really looking like he's got a nose for the net like he usually does. And it's good to see him have a nose for the net in his new spot. They do need to increase their possession a little bit, but that's just due to finding their footing without Jack Grealish, which they're starting to find it. A lot of guys are starting to come forth and really fill that role that Grealish left. In terms of Newcastle, they need to put shots on target. They need to be a little more offensively minded. They just had one shot on target this week. You're not going to win games with putting one shot on target. The one benefit is Joe Willock was back, their big money signing, their number one target in this transfer window. So he was back, he was starting. So hopefully he brings the spark that they need moving forward. Not the greatest week for Newcastle, though. Crystal Palace and Brentford. So Crystal Palace opened their home campaign with a 0-0 draw to newly promoted side Brentford. So we'll start with Brentford here. Brentford took points. And it's always important for a newly promoted team, especially one that was not automatically promoted, to take points where they can. And Buemo looks fantastic. He's looked solid his first 2 games up there. The only issue is, and it's no reason for Brentford fans to panic yet, but Ivan Toney needs to. He needs to score. This is a guy that scored over 30 goals in the championship last year. Ivan Toney, at some point he needs to score. It's 2 games in. It's very early. I know he's going to score goals, but it's just a matter of, it's been 2 games now. Now you got to start thinking about putting the ball in the back of the net. He has played well, though, in his first 2 games. In terms of Crystal Palace, they took points. It was a decent bounce back after an expected loss to Chelsea. Last week I said it was really on to the next. They got a point out of this, so that's always important for a team that's going to be potentially struggling to stay up with relegation. But their strikers need to wake up here. They haven't scored in their first 2 games. They need more from Benteke, Wilfried Zaha, Jordan Ayew. So really, once the strikers show up, which all of them are capable of doing, they should be just fine. Leeds and Everton. This was one of the games I was outlining this week. I said was one of the matches to watch. And it didn't disappoint. Very competitive 2-2 draw. Leeds does not quit. They play with consistent intensity. That's how Marco Bielsa gets his boys going. And they did that. They were down 2-1 going into, after 70 plus minutes in the 72nd. They got the equalizer from Rafinha. They destroyed Everton when it came to possession of the ball. 70% this week. Whenever you eclipse that 70 mark, it's usually pretty special. They do need to tighten up defensively. They gave up 17 attempts on net, or 17 attempts, 8 on target. Definitely need to. The back four needs to be cleaned up a bit. They're still working some things out, but it was good that Leeds could get a point out of this so that they don't fall with 2 losses to start the year. Everton, they made the most of having minimal possession. When you can get 2 goals off 30%, you're usually doing something right on your counterattacks. It also helped Calvert-Lewin drew a penalty. And he looks like he's offensively poised this year. 4 shots, all his shots were on goal, so 4 shots on goal. Like I said, the PK goal, obviously important. So overall, a decent start for Rafa Benitez in his tenure with Everton. Moving on to Man City and Norwich, 5-0 beatdown in Manchester against Norwich this week. This is how City needs to beat these teams that are going to be struggling with relegation. Tough loss last week. It was great that they bounced back. When you're facing lower league teams like this, you need to win 5-0. You can't just be squeaking by these teams. They did what they had to do. Jack Grealish netted his first as a Citizen, so obviously that's a promising sign for the £100 million man. So great week for City. Not much you can say for Norwich. This wasn't a game they were expected to win on the road against arguably the best team in European football right now. So really another on to the next situation with Norwich. They'll look to get prepared for week 3. So now moving on to one of the matchups that I highlighted last week as being a key matchup to watch this week. Brighton and Watford didn't disappoint. 2-0 win at home. At home for Brighton. Neil Maupay. I know it's only 2 games. He's a goal a game. He's in a goal a game form right now. But this is the form that he needs to be in. He needs to be scoring goals. It's something that they expected from him last year. He struggled to get that. It's looking like he's on track to be who they expected to be, or who they expected him to be last season. They do need to clean up the amount of cards they got. 4 yellow cards. Definitely, they need to be a little more disciplined defensively because that can come back to bite them potentially. Watford, I said this last week, they have to take care of business against teams at or below their skill level. Now, I don't think there's a lot of teams below Watford's skill level. I think they're near the bottom tier of teams. But they need to take care of business against those bottom 8 teams. And they didn't. They did a good job to win against Villa, a team that I projected to be in the top 10, but they can't count on winning those games consistently. They have to try to get the games that are a little more winnable, and they didn't do it this week. Obviously, it's never easy going on the road to play, especially when you're a newly promoted team. We'll see how they bounce back in week 3. They need to put more shots on target, though. Just 1 shot on target in 10 attempts this week. That's not going to be good enough to get you wins. Moving to Southampton and Man United. Man United had provided a thorough beatdown of Leeds last week. It was not the case this week. A 1-1 draw on the road to Southampton. The Saints took care of business against a Big 4 squad, as they got to try to salvage as many points as they can, as they're going to be in a potential relegation battle this year. And they got the job done despite the low possession. I mean, it was a Fred own goal, but you'll take what you can get. Doesn't matter how ugly the points are. Points are points. So they were good. They were good to salvage a 1-point draw this week, and it was disappointing for United after that. They beat a team that was much better than Southampton and Leeds United last week. So they only put four shots on target in 15 attempts. They had 5 goals last week. So do the math. They need to make sure that they're consistent in their offense. As it's going to be troubling if they can't get back to that week 1 form. So we'll see how they bounce back. Wolves and Tottenham. It finished. Wolves lost 1-0 at home to Spurs. This is a tough loss for Wolves to take because I felt Wolves was the better team here. They need to tighten up their shots, but when you put 25 attempts on net, I mean, they only had 6 on target, 25 attempts. That's usually good enough for you to win games. They had 32 crosses. This team is deadly when it comes to crossing the ball in, but they just couldn't find a way to score this week. It's frustrating when they lost on a kind of debatable penalty really early on to Dele Alli. I wouldn't have called it, but I could see the argument for it being called. So a frustrating loss. And again, Tottenham's going to take the wins where they can get them. These are two tough wins that they took. At home against City, on the road against Wolves. They only put 8 shots on net, but when you put 6 shots on target, that's a high percentage of shots on target, and they've got the talent to do it. So 6 points is 6 points, and they got Harry Kane back. So the verdict is still out on whether he's going to get the move to City that he wants, but Harry Kane is back, came off the bench, so we'll see what his role is moving forward. But all in all, good signs for Nuno Espirito and Tottenham right now. And speaking of the polar opposite of a Big 7 team here, not good signs for Arsenal as they lose 2-0 at home to Chelsea, albeit Chelsea's a better team than Arsenal. But they look a little lost right now. Low possession, low shots. They don't look offensively there. They need something up front. As I know they didn't have Lacazette this week, but Aubameyang needs to step up. I mean, there's potential that he might be on the move when all is said and done before the transfer window closes this week, but you never know. But they need to find a way to score. I mean, Odegaard and Ramsdale are on their way to help. Ramsdale obviously helping in the back end and net. Odegaard will help facilitate things in the midfield. But when a team like Arsenal drops their first 2 games, they're sitting at the bottom of the table right now. You don't want to fall into a point where it's tough to climb out of that. Chelsea, they did what they had to do. Lukaku looks like he's the man up front, or looks like he's the man for the job up front. He put 8 shot attempts in this game. Always good when you come in guns ablaze in your first game. So obviously good for Lukaku this game. They own the possession with 65%. And continuous pressure, 22 shot attempts. When you put that many attempts, or when you attempt that many shots, usually good things are going to happen. So a good win for Chelsea this week as they move up and around the top of the table. Moving on to West Ham and Leicester City, the last game of the week. This was the last game that I outlined last week as being a key game this week. West Ham, they made the most. They're making the most of their Premier League focus. They don't have to divide focus with Europa League fixtures. Those are going to start up pretty soon, so you have to get the wins where you can when all your focus is devoted to the Premier League. Michael Antonio is proving the doubters wrong. A lot of people thought that Michael Antonio, a little too old to be upfront, to continue to be upfront consistently for the Hammers, but he's now the highest scoring West Ham player in Premier League history. So congratulations to Michael Antonio, a big two goal outing for him this week. They need to continue to bring that continuous pressure, especially against teams that are supposed to be, especially these Power 7 teams, and they've done that. And maybe they can move into the conversation of making it a Power 8 if they can finish near the top of the table like they did last year. So a good outing for West Ham, and it's a tough loss for Leicester City to take here. They need Johnny Evans back. They need Vestergaard to come in at center back. Just not a great defensive game for them. It's good to see Yuri Tielemans get on the score sheet, but maybe they need Jamie Vardy to score, as they seem to win when Vardy scores. So we'll see how Leicester comes back. I don't really know what to say about this Leicester loss. It just wasn't their week. Now, moving into the matches that I think are going to be key matches in week 3. So we'll start off with Aston Villa and Brentford. Villa's finding their form without Grealish, with guys like Buendia, Ings, Ashley Young, Axel Tuanzebe. El Ghazi looks back in form, so they're certainly finding ways to win. And that's important. And we'll see if Brentford can gain more points. Can Ivan Toney get on the score sheet? Because I think that's going to be key for their long-term success this season. And this is really going to be their first test, against a solid scoring team. Arsenal didn't have a full squad in week 1. Crystal Palace, no one really knows what to make of Crystal Palace yet. Villa's pretty established right now. They've got guys that can put the ball in the back of the net, so it'll be interesting to see if that back four can continue their run of clean sheets here. Moving on to Liverpool and Chelsea. This is obviously 2 Big 4 teams here. Can Liverpool stave off the offensive pressure that Chelsea brings, especially now that Lukaku's in the lineup? They need Diogo Jota, they need Mane, they need Salah to be firing on all cylinders up front, as well as Van Dijk in the back four need to be in form. And can they, like Brentford, keep their run of clean sheets going? Chelsea's looking to do the same thing in terms of clean sheets. They're looking to stay in championship form right now. And they're looking to stay one up on City right now, who obviously lost in week 1, bounce back week 2. If they can get a win here and just stay 3 points ahead of City, that could be important when all is said and done throughout the season here. And moving into the last matchup, Burnley and Leeds United here. So can Sean Dyche work his magic at Turf Moor again? Can they get Chris Wood firing on all cylinders up front there? He needs to get going. They need to find ways to score goals right now, especially with their midfielders and strikers. But they are going to need Ben Mee and Tarkowski to minimize that consistent intensity that Leeds brings. And moving on to Leeds here, it's a must-win game for Marco Bielsa and the boys in yellow here. Can Leeds get a win against a team that is most certainly worse than they are? Can Patrick Bamford get on the board after his huge extension he signed this past week? Can he start his campaign off right within the first 3 games here and score one for Leeds right now, who is kind of struggling to score goals here? So we will see what comes of this. We'll see what comes of this week. Those are the 3 matches I'm highlighting. Make sure you tune in next week as we'll give you analysis on all the week 3 action heading into the international service break here. And that'll do it for our week 2 Premier League update. If you like the video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads, especially our weekly Premier League uploads here. Comment down below what you thought of week 2 and what games you're looking forward to in week 3. And with that, we will see you in the next video. Peace.